Salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this Voice of Islam show, our weekly show. In fact, we have two shows weekly, subhanAllah, on this platform. And tonight, we're of course talking about new Muslim challenges. It's a challenge to be alive these days, but to be a new Muslim, to be a person that's accepted Islam, and oftentimes the families run off. Maybe the marriage is broken up. Maybe the children have become distant from the father or the mother who's accepted the faith. It's a very difficult situation. So, series of show with our honorable Sheikh Wasim Kempson, who's also, of course, quote unquote new Muslim like myself. We'll be talking about
new old one
issues. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, how are you, brother?
Good, alhamdulillah. I'm good. I'm alhamdulillah. It's been a very, very
hectic
hot
week
day today. Very hot, and
indeed.
I know it's extremely hot there in London, where you're based, and I don't know what. I think it's very cold in New Zealand, where the rest of the brothers are, stationed. Subhanallah. Am I right?
Yes, that's right. It's very warm down here in London, and yeah. And many
so, Wasim, how are you? How are you? And how's your week been?
So my week has been good. Alhamdulillah. Just I haven't done that much myself. The kids are, studying virtually. Apart from that, I went to visit a few brothers. But yeah, it's okay. I mean, alhamdulillah, everything's fine. Just looking forward to the masajid opening here in the UK, maybe in about 10 days' time. And we'll see how that goes, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us to open up the masajid and for them to remain open. And even I just wish that Hajj was going to be performed. That's something we need to talk about is Hajj as a new Muslim later on. But tonight,
inshallah,
we will be talking about diet and food. You and I were talking about a very funny subject, and we mentioned shepherd's pie. We mentioned shepherd's pie, as being like a dish that we used to yearn for back in the days. I remember when we first accepted Islam, we could not find toad in the hole, shepherd's pie, roast dinner, all of these things. It's something that a lot of new Muslims, they know a lot about, but then when you tell the brothers, the sisters, what's this yearning for this dish? There's different varied responses, isn't there?
Yeah. I remember, I got a funny story about shepherd's pie, actually.
Yeah.
So, what year is it now? I would say it's about 22 years ago, right? I was in Medina. And mostly every Eid, a group of the Western students, they would get together, like the brothers would get together, and then all the wives would get together in somebody's house. And we're talking about maybe 20 families, 25 families. It was real good, mashallah. So one of them said, we'll make a list of what dish each person's going to bring. Tried to make it a national dish. So there was one particular family said, they're from the UK, by the way. They said, we're going to bring shepherd's pie. I was like, oh, shepherd's pie. Okay, that'll be interesting. I haven't had shepherd's pie for quite a long time. So the day of Eid came, and everybody brought their own kind of dishes and things. And that particular family, of course, will remain anonymous because for reasons you'll know why in a minute. So they bought the shepherd's pie, and they were sharing out. Obviously, it has like mashed potato on top, and it has the mince at the bottom and things like that. So they're sharing it out, and the American students are going, "Oh wow, man, this is amazing shepherd's pie!" And from a distance, I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, "That's a bit of a strange color." The sauce isn't red. Anyway, it came to me. I got a little bit of it, and I was thinking, "Man, what is this? This is nowhere near shepherd's pie." It's like a tomato sauce in it with beans in it. And I said, I had to make a point. I said, the brother was there, alhamdulillah. I said, this is really, really nice. You've gone to great lengths to produce something which you've called shepherd's pie, but I have to give it to you, bro. This is nowhere near shepherd's pie. Okay. I don't mean to kind of pop anybody's bubble or, but this isn't shepherd's pie. But when I came back to the UK, especially living in South London, there weren't that many halal shops.
Yeah.
And to buy meat was a little bit difficult. So making, dishes like this was a little bit difficult. Nowadays, there's a halal, meat shop all over the place.
Yeah.
And these kind of meals I make at home. Shepherd's pie, Cumberland pie, roast dinner. All of these meals I do properly. And there are some secrets which will remain secrets as to how they're done properly, inshallah. But it's not done with tomato sauce, I can assure you.
It's certainly not tomato sauce. That's absolutely sure. It's certainly not baked beans. No, that's not the way shepherd's pie is made at all. Even Riaz Khan, who's sitting next to me, he will verify. Is that how shepherd's pie is made? Baked beans and tomato sauce? Right. No? Okay,
no,
right.
Not at all.
It's absolutely confirmed that is not how we make shepherd's pie, Wasim. So, sorry, I'm just adjusting my little holder here. Right, that's better. No. Wasim, are you still there?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
I'm still here, brother.
So, a lot of issues that brothers and sisters come up with when they embrace Islam about, what is halal and how is halal, what's wrong? How is halal, manifested, or what should we eat? Because, it's not, halal is also about being tayyib, halal and tayyib as well. So if you talk a little bit about that, because something which really, really whitens, what you might call sort of upsets me a lot is when I eat halal, but I realize it's not particularly very good, in terms of the meat quality, so on and so forth. So I think we should talk about that as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does mention in the Quran in a few places, that in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, about what was made halal and tayyib. And obviously, the condition placed down, that is halal, is categorical, i.e. something that's not halal would then fall into something which is haram.
Yes.
And so we have to, as Muslims, that what we do consume is halal. The issue of tayyib, meaning that is because you translate halal as permissible, and something that is tayyib, which is good, something halal and good. And the question is, with regards to tayyib, that the ethical kind of issues around maybe the food that we get, the rearing of chickens and meat and things like that. Is this something that may lead to? We can discuss this further. Does this lead to something being not permissible for us, even though it might be slaughtered correctly, but because it's reared incorrectly, does this render the meat not permissible for us? So it's a very important topic, very, very important topic.
Yeah, it is. So what was your, because your thought about, or your thoughts, as it were, about, the whole issue of meals, having meals, halal food, and so on and so forth, and then being a new Muslim, one is used to a certain diet, and then suddenly, you get thrust into eating lots of curries, don't you? If you're from the Southeast Asian sort of community, or you get thrust into that community.
Sure.
So there's issues there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, as a Muslim, I mean, the vast majority, if your circles are predominantly going to be Muslims, then you're going to hang around and be with company from brothers and sisters from, from those countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, maybe Somalia now. I've seen, there's Somalian restaurants all over the place now, mashallah. I'll get used to Somalian food. So a person who reverts to kind of, or converts or reverts to Islam, you're going to no doubt change your diet. It doesn't mean you have to leave your food.
Yeah.
You can keep your own food that you like, but you just have to ensure that it is that it's halal. Yeah.
Subhanallah. So I'm sure that there must be a lot of brothers and sisters that are listening in, and they want to ask questions or they want to make comments about the nature of this topic. Of course, is about new Muslims and the problems or the challenges that they face once they embrace Islam. And we're talking specifically today about diets. Although some of the brothers in New Zealand think that it's about family, by the way. I don't know if you've seen that comment. You should be talking about family.
Oh, really?
Right. So there's a difference of opinion on this. But anyway, we decided we're going to talk about diets, did we not?
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Everyone likes food and diet and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a topic I think everybody will enjoy, inshallah ta'ala.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can talk about, of course, we're both from England, so we tend to go for the European sort of English diets, don't we?
Generally, I guess. But I think in the UK, we're kind of fortunate, blessed, in that we have so many different backgrounds of Muslims here in the UK. We have from the subcontinent, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan as well. We also have a big intake of Somalis within the last 20 years or so. Somali community, and also the Arab community have been here, of course, quite a long time. You can go to different parts of London. So you're kind of spoiled for choice, really. Whatever type of food you want, you can kind of, you can travel the globe and still remain in London. Or whatever main city you're in, because Muslims, alhamdulillah, have a good presence in more main cities, whether it's Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool, London, Cardiff, up in Scotland as well. There's no shortage of Muslims, opening restaurants. And that's what Muslims do well, I think.
I think that's another issue, isn't it? In terms of diet, in terms of culinary diversity within the Muslim community. Well, the first thing is, if you look at Britain, the staple diet now is chicken tikka masala. I think it's number one dish before shepherd's pie and cod and chips. So
that's right.
So Muslims actually are famed for their diets and their food, isn't it? So in actual fact, it's a great dawah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way to a person is to feed them. I mean, this is one of the advices of the Prophet ﷺ when he first came to Medina. Is to feed people. It is definitely within an Islamic tradition is to, if you get a guest or you visit somebody, is to present them with some food, some tea, some coffee, some drinks, to give them something. And this is a great introduction for da'wah in feeding people, because it breaks the ice in so many ways. Because a lot of the time, you find it's a different type of food, and then they, especially with your neighbors, you present different foods to them, and then obviously your neighbor will say, "Okay, well, what is this about?" And that's your your step to kind of explaining what we do in Islam.
Indeed. So great opportunity for dawah through food and diets. Obviously, as I say, the Indian subcontinent have dominated. The British cultural tradition has changed because of that. I think the Turkish community is also taking over.
Of course.
Turkish community is taking that role now, as well as the Arab community as well. You've got places like Abu Zaid, based in Shepherd's
Abu Zaid.
Abu Zaid.
Abu Zaid, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Abu Zaid.
Yeah,
Abu
that's
Zaid.
right.
And
That's right. There's one in Edgware Road as well.
of course,
Right.
absolutely. And so through food, although it was specifically trying to sort of link it to the new Muslims, it's also a new Muslims and a dawah issue, isn't it? That we can use that food as a way of encouraging people to become familiar with Muslims and familiar with Islamic culture. Also, a lot of the restaurant owners are known for being more, not only the food is better, but, you know, the service should be better, because hospitality is something in the deen that we honor our guests, isn't it? Even if they are paying guests into a restaurant.
You know, just yesterday, I was out with my mother. We were driving, so I was taking my mother to do a couple of things. And we, for whatever reason, we were talking about food. And then she was talking about a Chinese food. And I said, there's a place in South London, Tooting. And they have Chinese food there. So she's asking what it's like and things like that. And I said, okay, let's go. So we went there. And there's a Muslim brother there. They're all Muslims serving in the marketplace. And I said to my mother, I said that you get this little dish here for £5. She goes, oh, that's really cheap. And the brother filled the dish. I mean, literally piled it on so much. You can't think that the cover can go on top of it.
Yeah.
And my mother was amazed how kind of generous that they were in their portions for the amount that they charge. And again, this is an opportunity for da'wah. And I said that, you know, as Muslims, we should be very generous. Don't cut corners, especially with your business. If you want blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give. And the more you give, the more you will get back. And she said, you know, if I come through here again, I'll purchase from this individual. So it's very important, as you know, to advise that, you know, the Muslim brothers and who own restaurants and things like that, or in the catering industry, is to be fair and to be generous. And then not only are you doing a good service to your customers and things like that, but you're being you do it with a good intention, and you're rewarded for that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you so much more. On that note, I think the brother has joined us. We've got another guest. Is that right?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'm not sure if I want to say, brother, do I want to be where you are at the moment? It looks very nice where you are. Next to next to the seaside, mashallah. Well, we call it a seaside. You might say
it's a beautiful place.
It's a green screen.
Yeah. Is it a green screen?
I don't know.
The brother can confirm.
It's just the background.
Oh, okay. Mashallah.
I'm currently at home at the moment.
Okay,
that does not look at home. If that's home, I want to be there, brother. I'm joining you now, right? Inshallah. Mashallah. So jazakallah khair, brother, and maybe you can actually introduce yourself, my brother, because I've just been thrust into this. You're a revert Muslim, I understand, and you're originally from Philippines. Am I right?
That's correct.
That looks like Philippines behind you there.
Yeah, true. Mashallah. My name is actually my birth name is Renee Alviar. As you have said, I'm Filipino by origin. Currently living here in New Zealand, working for First Gas as an engineer. I reverted to Islam quite a while back. I think in 2000. I think it was 2004. When I was working for a company in Saudi Arabia. So my life has been a sojourn journey towards to so many places that I've worked because of my profession. So kind of been all over the place.
Alhamdulillah. How did you find Arabic food when you first went to Saudi? Because actually we're talking about diet and and being a new Muslim, dietary issues and finding halal food and knowing what to eat afterwards as well. That's the sort of thing we're talking about, just to give you some background about the topic tonight. Myself, Yusuf Chambers, I'm Yusuf Chambers, and we've got Sheikh Wasim Kempson, and we're both from the UK. We're both new Muslims, quote unquote. I'm an old new Muslim, and he's a slightly younger new Muslim.
Yeah, I met you, Tim, when you were here.
Yeah.
I'm based in Taranaki area.
Yes.
Yep. When I first came into Saudi Arabia, I've obviously introduced to the kabsa. It's like a chicken roasted chicken, really. And I'm used to that. So I mean, in the Philippines, we're kind of always having a main dish plus rice, and most of our food had soup in it. So it's a kind of a change in paradigm for me, that you have mostly dry food in there. Yeah. And what strikes me about how the food in the Middle East is because all of the food there are halal, and where I came from in the Philippines is a bit difficult, especially if you live in Manila, the center, where access to halal food is kind of limited. That's my initial struggle, but dietary requirement, I think it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that obviously in non-Islamic you have pork and everything. Some of those are included in the menu, but apart from that, if you have varieties of choices to be made, you can still have some of it, but it's kind of limited in terms of when you're inside Manila.
Yeah,
especially if you don't know the people. There are restaurants there that are serving halal food, but they don't have the logo in it. But recently, when I visited, there's a few more restaurants that are serving halal food.
Yeah. So what?
I think a good point, Brother Yusuf. I think if we could just move, the issue of food. I mean, the different types of food around the Muslim countries and around the Muslim world. But what about the issue of eating healthily? Because I think, Allah does tell us to eat, halal, but also tayyib, and that is to eat good. And it is very easy for us. And if we look at, Muslim menus, by and large, a lot of it comes under not really that being that healthy, oily food. I don't want to single out, particular countries, but even, the same type of food, it can be quite unhealthy. And I think there's a big move towards Muslims, eating healthily. And Filipino food, is that generally quite healthy? Is it not that oily, or even, how does it work?
Well, it depends on where you are at, because it's the Philippines is an island, so depends whether you're in the main in the mountains. Obviously, most of the food will be meat-based and some vegetables. But if you go through the islands, it will be a lot more into fisheries kind of food. And also the influence of some of the islands will have spicy and others are not. So depends on where you are at.
Okay.
MashaAllah. No, it's a good point you raise about health and food and so on and so forth. I mean, the amounts which we eat is one thing that worries me a lot, because Muslim hospitality is renowned for being guys that like to feed. to new limits. And I remember I spent a lot of time in Kuwait and in Qatar, and I would be invited, and the food was just extraordinarily huge amounts. And you're compelled to feel like you want to eat a lot of it as well. And this is not a healthy thing, of course. It's healthy for the spiritual understanding. I mean, this, the da'wah, because a lot of people think that da'wah means invite for food. So, there's restaurants. The Indians have got restaurants or I think it might be even Pakistanis have got restaurants called dawat. So,
Dawat.
Food. Yeah, it literally. There's one in Tooting High Street, if you know it, in London. And really, so we are famed for giving and for hosting and for these opulent, beautiful spreads of food. I mean, if you look at the Arab Peninsula, there's a rice and a whole animal in there. Could be what is it? Camel, a whole camel. And it's like honoring the guest. It's part of the deen, right? But where's it gone wrong, Sheikh Wasim? Because we seem to have taken that to a new level. That hospitality bit.
I think hospitality is very good. It's part of ikram al-dayf. Is honoring the guest, is to feed them and giving something. And it can be good and it can be negative and positive. If we bear in mind also that the Prophet says that, have 1/3 of your stomach for food, 1/3 for water, and 1/3 for breathing. That's also a good kind of thing for us to remember, and not to overeat. And you're right, the portions that are given to us are, at times amazingly big. And, from time to time, I mean, if you're invited to a celebration or something like that, and you slightly overeat, then okay, things can happen. But you don't make that the norm. Yeah. That's when it becomes an issue. That every time you eat to your absolute fill. That you need to kind of rest back, and you're having difficulty breathing. That's an issue. And we know that the Prophet also told us that there is no worse vessel that is filled by the son of Adam than his stomach. And overeating, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, overeating can lead to laziness, can lead to many, many negative things. So this is something that I think you need to look at the Sunnah and see how we can use the Sunnah to eat healthily, not to overeat. That's from the Sunnah. To eat in good amounts. That's from the Sunnah. No.
Okay. That's fine. Because I'm using my phone, I do apologize. From time to time, I have to answer the chat and so on and so forth. So forgive me for that. But it's Khalid Rashid. What does your mother? What does your mother think about you? And in terms of your diet, when you go back home, does she feed you sometimes pork or something like that? I mean, is it difficult? Because I know when I first became Muslim, is one of the areas I want to cover tonight. It was extremely difficult to turn down my mother's roast dinner, and I had to come out with a fatawa, regarding Ahl Kitab, the meat of the Christians, and so on and so forth, and I had a real struggle with that. So Khalid Rashid, is that something you faced, the difficulties you faced, and after that, Sheikh Wasim?
Yep, certainly when I went home, my mother at one point did serve pork, but normally you have an alternative to it. So I just explained it's been sort of an argument around eating, and my brother would normally say it's a food that you just put it in your mouth and gets digested, and goes out the other way. So and then it becomes a long discussion around that topic, saying why would God limit the food? It's just the food. So around those lines. And if you look at how our father Adam alayhi salam, when he eventually ate from the forbidden tree, he didn't make an excuse saying, well, it's just a food. So it's kind of different. And now we in future back in current times, we tend to make excuses and saying, this is just food, there's nothing more. Yeah. So that's the struggle. And my approach there is just to explain because my father, I've got a bit of push from my father, because my father doesn't want to eat pork as well, saying pork is a bit dirty. And if you know people who's been raising pork or pigs in their farm, it's really a nasty sight. That's why my father used to. No, I mean, I'll try to avoid pork as well.
Yeah. Well, Sheikh Wasim, I'm sure you've got some stories, but I think it's a great area to start having a dialogue with families, saying, well, before I'd eat anything from anyone, and now, as much as I love your food, Mum, and I really wish I could, because I remember it was a big thing for her. You come to my house, you're a new Muslim, you're this Muslim thing that's associated with so many bad things in the world, and now you're saying you won't even eat my food. And not only that, you have stopped calling yourself Tim and you call yourself like Yusuf or something. I mean, you've rejected everything I taught you. Yeah. So it's a major, major issue. So we need to know as Muslims, especially those who are new Muslims, very fresh, how to deal with this issue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I first became Muslim, there are certain foods you stop eating. My mom was okay in the sense that she said, if you buy your own food, you can cook it yourself, absolutely no problem. But the thing is, when she was growing up, she said, I remember there was a shop local to us and it was owned by Muslims. And unfortunately, what sticks in her mind is that she said, I just remember these yellow chickens hanging in the windows with all flies around it. So that was her vision and understanding of what halal food was. And it's difficult to kind of detox somebody that they have that from a childhood memory of that's what halal food is. And when I said to her that this is the kind of food I'm eating, she was like, well, there's no way I'm eating that. I can't. Over a period of time, many years now, maybe even next week, depending on the weather, we've done it before, alhamdulillah. I'll go to a house, I'll go to the halal shop, I'll buy halal food, meat and chicken, and we'll all have a barbecue together. So we have evolved on that side. I've actually physically taken her to halal shops to see how clean the particular shops that I go to, and how that memory that she had is not the norm. So this is something that at the beginning you can be a little bit, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat that, but you need to explain it's not about what you can't eat, it's about why you can't eat it. So with pig and so on, that we consider it to be a filthy animal for the following reasons. I mean, I remember also I used to work as a butcher when I first became Muslim. I worked as a butcher for a little while, and I said to that this is a dirty animal. And they said, no, a pig is one of the cleanest animals. I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, what do you mean it's dirty? And I said, well, it eats its own feces and whatnot. They said, oh, so do cows. I didn't have much knowledge. But there's only later on when you start gaining a bit more knowledge of the issues with pigs itself and how quickly it digests its food. And it doesn't give whatever it eats, and it eats everything. The bacteria that's in the food doesn't get broken down quick enough in its kind of meat. So when you eat the pig meat, you're actually eating a meat which has lots and lots of bacteria and bad things in the meat itself. For this reason, we know that we should stay away from it. I remember a couple of examples. My mom used to cook these potatoes, right, roast potatoes, and she used to use lard. And then I used to cook. I said, "What is lard? What's lard? What is it?" She goes, "You know what? I don't know. It's just fat." So I said, "Yeah, but what kind of fat?" And I said, "Let me have a look. It's pig dripping." I said, "Lard is actually pig dripping fat." She goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." I said, "No, well, obviously I can't do that." Another thing, I said, "What about black?" I said, "Do you know what black pudding is?" She goes, "Actually, I'm not sure." I said, "Black pudding is actually pig's blood. It's pure pig's blood with some spices in it, and then when you cook it, it goes into a solid." And I was like, so many people eat things not knowing actually what it is. So I think it's really important, as Muslims, we can be a force for good in not saying, "Oh, this is halal and this is haram," but you can be pushed to saying, I want to eat healthy. I want to eat halal, but I want to eat healthy. It's not just halal, halal, because a non-Muslims like, well, you're your way and this is my way. Try to push the healthy thing, the healthy kind of thing with the halal, and then they may go along with you. So if you can, have these kind of, means of inserting these da'wah kind of messages, then they may be more likely to kind of go along with your new diet or your approach to eating. Mix the healthy issue with it.
Yeah, of course, in New Zealand, they have a healthy tradition of grilled meats, braai, or they call it the barbecue. So Abdul Rashid, you've got, but you must have been invited to a lot of barbecues, and one has to, at least it's quite healthy anyway, because you're taking the fat. The fat is leaving the animal, as it were, the meat. And it's a healthier option, isn't it? But again, one's faced with where the animal has come from, where the meat has come from, so on and so forth. So maybe we could just on that point touch on what is halal and what is halal, because a lot of people, they don't understand what halal actually is. And for those who are not yet Muslim, those people, we have some people from Fiji and other places who are watching, by the way, or pick up on these videos later on. So let's explain exactly what halal is and add the tayyib bit as well.
Okay, so for something to be deemed halal, meaning permissible, Islamically, that it has to go through a certain process with regards to its slaughtering. And I'm not going to make it too graphic, but each animal has 2 arteries here at the side, and it has also the windpipe. There's 4 in all. There's 4 elements to that what can be cut in the neck of an animal. And you have to ensure that when the animal is slaughtered, a lot of the scholars, they say you have to mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in line with what Allah tells us in the Quran. Do not eat by that except Allah's name has been mentioned over it. And that when it is slaughtered, that the blood flows, it gushes. And this is what will render the meat or the animal halal for us to consume. And that it will die because of that slaughtering process. As for other ways that maybe animals are killed, slaughtered, that they're, for example, a bolt will go through a head and kill them, and then they're slaughtered after. For us, that's not allowed as Muslims, as that would be considered a halal, because the animal is dead before it's kind of the neck is then slaughtered, is then cut, is dead already. So this is a very important thing for us to adhere to. There's the difference between an animal being considered carrion, which is like dead flesh, as opposed to being something halal for us. And obviously in the books of fiqh that they discuss, out of the 4, like, is it sufficient for one of the arteries to be cut, and the esophagus, the windpipe, or do two of the arteries have to be cut? This is a discussion amongst the scholars, but nonetheless, this is the kind of method that has to be adhered to. The issue of stunning is another issue. Are you allowed to stun an animal, i.e., not to kill it?
Yes.
Because by stunning it, you render it kind of just, to incapacitate it. You're not killing the animal. It makes it easier to then go through a process of slaughtering. We're not here to kind of give fatwa as to what's right, what's wrong.
No.
There are views to say that yes, you can stun as long as you can assure that you don't kill the animal. No doubt, if you can do away with stunning and just you don't have to do that to the animal, then that's better. Yeah. But this, I think, is general what you would consider to be halal.
So there's a lot of bad press, isn't there, Khalid Rashid? Regarding halal. Halal is deemed as being something intrinsically evil and very bad for the animal, and so on and so forth, and that therefore, when the word halal is mentioned, it's not something which is good for people who are not Muslim.
Yes, I've got one experience at one time when I invited people to a restaurant, a halal restaurant, when I was in the Philippines. And one of the guys that was there, he was saying, I can't eat halal food. But what I did is I've seen, because he's following a certain sect in the Philippines that is really critical on the halal food, although majority of his followers are in the Middle East. But with that in mind, what I did is I offered an alternative. There was some bread and vegetables in there. And he took the bread. And when he took the bread, I explained that, that bread is likewise halal. So he was quite surprised, because there's a cloud of, misunderstanding around what halal is. So majority, they were thinking of just a slaughtered food in Islamic, whatever tradition or whatever ritual it is. So that's an opportunity to do da'wah around halal food, is to be able to explain that this is the right way of treating animals in that regard. And also it's not limited to certain meats, but it's also in absolutely rather Kempson, Wasim mentioned, it's really permissible in that regard. And the Quran, as a general rule, is saying that most food are halal unless it otherwise there was a provision that says it's otherwise halal, haram.
In fact, that's the case with most things in life, that 99% of things are halal. It's only the impermissible, but the focus is always on, it's the problem of evil. The problem of evil is that it's always thrust in people's faces. The problem of bad, or something which is negated, negative. The negative is always much more sellable in immediate terms, and something that people tend to, sell. They don't talk about the good, and they don't talk about the positive and the halal. They talk about haram, they talk about haram, subhanAllah. But even in this case, the halal is sort of as being something negative. So what are the ways that we can try to change that? You've mentioned, Brother Khalid Rashid, you've mentioned that you can turn this into a positive force by talking about the fact that bread and all the other foods, and 99% of the foods you put in front of you is only pig and alcohol and something which is dead meat, dead flesh. It's not being slaughtered according to Allah's name. But one of the things that we can talk about now is also to try to mention that some of the brothers in the UK, they accept Ahl Kitab, you know, and I don't know whether that's something. We're not going to get into fiqh discussions here, but we are going to just explain it to people so they can make a decision about whether they should do that or not. Let's talk a little bit about that, or we can talk just mention the subject we were talking about first, which is permissible over impermissible, and the fact that it gets talked about a lot more, than is a negative.
Yeah. So it's easy to attack and to demonize the word halal because it's attached obviously to Muslims. And I remember a few years ago, there was a well-known newspaper here, and they said that halal burgers being sold at football matches. And there was a big kind of frenzy as to how dare Muslims try to sell their burgers, their halal food, to football going supporters. And these people, they don't know what they're buying. Now, first and foremost, Muslims didn't push these non-Muslim organizations, restaurants, buying halal burgers. And then they started to interview people, and they said, what do you think about halal burgers being sold at, football stadiums and sports matches and things like that? And they said, well, obviously their way of the way of do their food is very different from us. Obviously, they slaughter their animals. And the question is, well, wait a minute. So how do you think you eat your animals? Do you eat them alive? It was like, no, we kill the animal. So, right. So if the Muslims, they slaughter the animal, how do you think that burger, a non-halal burger, reaches your plate? And then they made him think, it was like, oh, right. So it's such playing on the ignorance of people about something that is halal. This is the first issue. And the second issue you mentioned, sorry, Yusuf, there was another kind of tangent you going on there just before.
Yeah, I was pushing that one out there. Maybe it was not a very clever thing to do. We were talking about the issue of Ahli Kitab as well.
Sorry, yes, Ahlul Kitab. Yeah. So
yeah,
I remember we've become much more educated here in the UK over the past 10, 15 years. Alhamdulillah. There are many organizations now which focus on the halal food business. It's unfortunate that previously it wasn't really adhered to properly, some of the practices within our community. And that's kind of been rooted out mostly, alhamdulillah, which is a good thing. So our knowledge concerning how animals are slaughtered, the requirements of that are not what they used to be. So therefore, the responsibility and onus upon us as Muslims now is to ensure that we can acquire halal food. Of course, Allah tells us in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ, that the food of the people of the book is halal for you. So then there are fatwa that are extracted that were asked to great ulama of the past 20, 25 years ago of Arabs who lived in the Arabian Peninsula, and that their perspective of many European countries, that they were Christian countries. So sometimes when they're Arabs, they would come here. They were asking, can we eat the food there? And obviously that perspective would be valid for them. But for us here, the perspective is different. It's a different perspective completely, because we know that, number one, that the Christianity in this country has gone down vastly. Number two, we are fully aware of the slaughtering methods here in the UK, which does not fulfill the Islamic criteria. So therefore, people jumping on, using the Quran, say you can go to this place and the other, you can eat this food and you can eat that food. The vast majority do not allow that, of the ulama of the UK.
Yeah,
they don't know, because of the knowledge we have. But then again, we don't want to kind of do away with, if there's some other views by other scholars and they looked at it from a different way, then okay, they're entitled to that.
Well, certainly it's an interesting discussion, and it's something that one could discuss with non-Muslim parents and from families, to say that Islam does discuss these things. It's intellectual, in its pursuit to find the best possible solution. So, for example, if you're in a minority country, a very small Muslim minority, and majority non-Muslim, and then halal is very difficult to come by, then we have those discussions, right? So, and that's an intellectual pursuit from the scholar's perspective. It's not our duty to do that. But what's interesting is that Islam is not black and white. And one can explain that Islam, there are black and white things, but generally speaking, Islam is a very open, intellectual religion, where scholars have extremely complicated discussions for decades sometimes to resolve issues, So it's just like the issue about women driving in Saudi and stuff like that. Well, I mean, we're not going to get into that, but that was a very detailed technical discussion from scholars. It's not something which is just out of the blue discussed and said, right, no, it's not going to happen. It had a context, it had a culture, it had a, so the referencing for these issues, it's interesting from a Dawah perspective that we can say, no, that is part of a very long discussion. Yeah. It's not just black and white. And again, it brings another sort of point of reference that we can just discuss here, which is, the whole issue of Islamic law, because of course that's something which is dragged through the dirt. Islamic law, cutting hands, cutting, beating, stoning, is a huge corpus of knowledge. Hundreds of books on one small issue, right? So again, it's something that from a Dawah perspective that we can bring to bear with our non-Muslim families, right, guys?
Yeah, that's correct. I've also had an experience at one time when we were doing a Dawah stall here, where one of our brothers sponsored a barbecue, a free barbecue for a lot of people at the market, and we've kind of distributed I think around 250 sausages. And one of the discussions that we had with the Ahlul Kitab is that because they were asking, is it halal meat that you're serving? And I said yes, and he kind of tasted it and found there's nothing much change in terms of taste, and some of the brothers still are able to produce sausages that are at par with how a sausage would taste like. So from that point where you look at the taste from a taste bud point of view, there's no change in that sense. And we've even raised the bar a little bit, that we have some spicy option on the sausage that we've served. And true enough, if you look at the from the Bible perspective, it's pretty obvious there in several parts of the Bible that prohibits eating pork. And with my being a Filipino, there's a lot of my exposure with our culture is that there are factions of the Christianity that really despise pork entirely, and there are one or two main Christian group in the Philippines that really they had their food halal, sort of doing away with any pork or its derivatives. And you did mention about brother about the black blood that become part of the delicacy in the Philippines as well. So and it's an easy discussion, an easy common ground for some of the Christians that do believe that pork shouldn't be in the table, and something that we do share with some of them.
Yeah. Jazakallah
Yeah, this
khair.
is, you're right. I mean, this is mentioned in the, if my memory mentions, I think it's in the book of Leviticus. It talks about pork being, you know, a filthy animal, not to consume it. So even from the Old Testament, it's something that, you know, prohibits pork. So it's not a new thing. Sorry, Yusuf, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, it's good. It's a healthy discussion. It's healthy. We're talking about, of course, halal. I mean, there's a number of reasons why one would abide by halal. Of course, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded it in the Quran for us to eat something which the name of God is prescribed over. And there's a methodology in the Sunnah, which is detailed largely in some Sahih hadiths. And so that's why we do it. But there's also another aspect of the tayyib bit that a lot of non-Muslim brothers and sisters, they won't know. They simply don't know that when it's done properly, according to the Sunnah, it's good for the animal. It's good for it's animal husbandry needs to be very, very, very strictly adhered to. And actually, if you look at the Jewish tradition, the kosher, it's very similar, isn't it? So, it's not just about, cut the neck and mention the name of Allah. What are you doing with that animal? Are you lining a load of animals up and slaughtering them one by one, and each animal can see his brother and sisters just about to be, and they're next? All of these things, and which goes against it, it flies in the face of this industrial, industrialized farming. It's not, from what my understanding is, I get frightened about eating any meat right now because of the ways that the injections and all the different sort of playing around with the animal and giving it foods, which even some of the foods that they're giving animals are actually animal products. We just don't know where it ends and where where it starts and where it ends.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, with halal food, there are times when you see a halal stamp on it, and then you look at that. There's one particular place that I know, and I don't buy from there anymore. Actually, it's quite a long time since I left it. They sell these chicken breasts, and they're absolutely enormous. I mean, it's borderline. You might as well just call it a turkey. It's enormous. I think. What is the size of that chicken for the chicken breasts to be that big? So obviously it's been injected with, I don't know whether it's injected with water or what kind of, I don't know.
Growth hormone.
So it's very important for us as Muslims, yes, to eat halal, but to eat that what is been sourced in the very best way. And I think not even as Muslims, there's a big movement here in the UK, I think in many Western countries, about, sourcing food in a good way, organic food, treating animals correctly, and ensuring that they're not abused, and we can be part of that. We really should be part of that, because animal welfare.
Shouldn't we be leading the way, though, Sheikh? Yeah. Sorry. Shouldn't we be leading on this discussion?
No, 100%. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are many opportunities for us to be leaders, but the thing is, it doesn't have to be directly. And this is a Muslim movement. It's just because sometimes people, when you start mentioning Islam, they put, well, is this an Islamic kind of movement you're on, or is it really for the animals? So in terms of da'wah purposes, yeah, we should be at the forefront, and we should be educating ourselves and educating other people about, sourcing food in a good way. And then that can be the door for da'wah. That this is an Islamic principle that, when you're going to slaughter an animal, that you don't do it in front of the other animals, for example. Have a sharp knife, that it's done quickly, that you don't punish, and put the animal through a difficult kind of slaughtering. And it's mentioned, in the Sunnah, if you're going to slaughter an animal, then do it quickly and do it properly. So as Muslims, we have an amazing opportunity. The food industry is a multi-billion industry from so many perspectives. and we can be leaders in that. Yeah, no doubt.
Another issue in that regard is, without going through the detail of the fiqh itself, is that there are varying opinions in terms of how you can industrialize the slaughtering of animals, and true enough, here in New Zealand, there's a good communication between the Muslim community and the government on how halal certificates and how is being conducted, and the beauty of it mesh perfectly with other, like the animal rights and what have not, in that regard. So it's good. The other issue that I've been hearing is that majority of the cow or meat processing in New Zealand is halal in itself, but obviously because of cross contamination and all that, it couldn't really mesh with some of the Muslim brothers who's currently in the country. Another issue is because of that, differences of opinions on how it's really done. There's a push for a live expert of animals, and it's taking a lot of heat as well, also in Australia and New Zealand, around that issue. So if we as a Muslim community is able to unite and give a proper or a common ground on how it's done, then we manage to convince those Muslim countries who's relying on our produce, or our cattle and stuff here in New Zealand. So it doesn't require any export of live animals.
Yes, I mean, these are pretty advanced discussions. A lot of Muslims would be thinking, well, I don't really care because I just get my chicken for £3, right? So what does it bother me? I mean, I get it £3. I can walk into a butcher's right now here in Leicester. I'm not in Leicester. I'm actually somewhere else at the moment, but I'm in a place called
undisclosed
Coventry.
Location.
Yeah. But the thing is, I can walk into a place and I can order 3 chickens, 3 birds, and I'll pay like £6, £7, £8. So what am I eating? I mean, is the question. How much does it cost for that bird to be slaughtered? Literally, probably raised very quickly with lots of injections, hormones. You mentioned hormones. I know that they found that the one meat producer here that is the main meat producer that sends all the money, all the food to restaurants, halal meat. It was injecting the chicken, especially the breasts, with water, and the enzymes in that water that it used to make sure that it all holds together was from a pig. So all the halal meat going to restaurants was actually contaminated with pork enzymes. So look, for me, I mean, this is a big discussion, because it's not about, it's about health as well. Halal for me means healthy. It means good. It means something which is, prescribed by Allah. It's God-given. And so when I think of halal, I try to think positively. So we as a community need to stop promoting rubbish, stop promoting mass production. I know we can't get away from it in many regards, but to promote halal as a whole lifestyle, for dawah, So you guys agree with me on that, or how can we make this happen?
I mean, you're right. Eating halal and eating tayyib, eating that what is good and nourishing, is part of our lifestyle. I know that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks and advises us in the Quran to purify our souls, to be sincere and God-fearing, to have piety, which is the main aspect, of course. But there's also the physical aspect, so we can actually carry out the acts of ibadah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't tell us to eat halal food, to eat tayyib, to eat nourishing food for no reason. Yes, primarily it is to eat food, for the purpose of meat and whatnot. That's an act of worship, of course. But there are other things like, other foods that don't need slaughtering, and we're encouraged to eat those foods. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be healthy people, healthy human beings. And there was a brother I know who was particularly sick, and the doctor said to him that, your food is your medicine before you get sick. Your food is your medicine. Obviously, if you become sick, there are certain things that you can take that inshallah Allah Azza wa Jalla puts a cure in that. But before you get sick, eat healthily. Nourish your body with good food, with beneficial food, not harmful food. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where, access to unhealthy food, sugary food, salt food, quick restaurant food is so accessible, and it's cheap as well. It's made cheap, so it's very easy for us to fall into that, to go to restaurants, to eat out, for it to be delivered to us. You don't even go anywhere, just a few clicks on your phone or your device, whatever. And in half an hour, if it's not there in half an hour, you're ringing, you want a discount on the food.
A discount on the £3 bird that you were trying to buy in the butchers, and that was become less costly. You wonder what on earth, how they prepared it, and that to me is shocking. I mean, Khalid, maybe you want to comment on that.
Yeah, it's properly phrased like that. The other issue is around the way people perceive halal food that needs to be addressed properly.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, if there's an axe to grind against the Muslims, it's all about halal. I mean, halal is like equivalent to hell. I mean, it's like, there's such a negative stigma around halal. And it's up to Muslims to promote the right halal. This is the point. So let's talk a lot more about how the animal's treated, talk against factory farming, talk against live, transportation of animals in horrible cages, and let's really talk a lot more about the benefits to mankind of halal and the vastness of halal as well.
I agree. I mean, education is so important, and I think Muslims will gain a lot more friends on issues like this. The looking after an animals, shipping animals, ensuring that animals are looked after properly, all of which are Islamic principles. And that leads into so many other issues. The looking after people, looking after farmers, making sure. I mean, because a lot of the time, to be honest, we've been speaking about the animals. There's also a lot of issues concerning the taking advantage of these poor farmers. Who are dictated by the multi-million corporations in producing milk and being paid virtually nothing for milk. So this is another issue which, as Muslims, we should try to support the rights of the workers themselves, and not to allow them to be taken advantage of.
Tomorrow we're going to be talking to Reza, who's a farmer. He's got 5 farms down in Invercargill in the South Island in New Zealand at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning UK time. That's probably 9 p.m. New Zealand time, I think it is. And we're going to be talking about halal farming. We're going to be talking about mass-produced farming. And we've also got a really interesting guest who's into food sustainability, is one of the top scientists in the UK regarding food sustainability and biotech. He talks a lot. He's going to be talking about biotech as well. So it's going to be a really interesting show. But I guess today we were talking about what it's like to be a revert, and talking about these halal issues and the stories that come up because of it. And Khalid's mentioned some, and of course Wasim, you've mentioned some. I've also had lots of dealings with my family and had to apologize profusely, because the first thing they talk about is, we've seen the way you guys treat animals, or what is it that why is it that those meat shops are so bad? So I think this is the main issue. If we can get this education issue of halal out to the wider masses, explain it. It could be like just a whole workshop on what is halal. We should deliver it in schools, colleges, universities, to the wider community online, to dispel these horrible myths about Islam, or halal being something which is really bad, intrinsically bad for mankind and animals, bad for the planet, so on and so forth. But only when we get back to what is truly Islam, starting to practice what is truly Islam, right, guys? And this is where I want to end it. I want to ask your closing comments around this issue, and we're going to get back to our families as well. The families are waiting as well. First of all, Sheikh Wasim.
Yeah, so I think we touched on really good, important issues about healthy eating, about as Muslims, when you embrace Islam, that there are some changes, but those changes can be positive. It's not restricting your diet. It's not restricting other people. And really, through food, can be an amazing opportunity to give da'wah, to explain how Islam views food, not overeating, eating healthily, feeding other people, from so many different aspects. And it's an intrinsic part of our religion. And bearing in mind that our religion, our Deen Islam, addresses the natural disposition that we are all in. We all eat every day. We need food to survive, but it just streamlines and ensures that what we're eating and how we eat allows us to function individually at the very best way, and also ensuring that we give the rights of helping other people. So food is a great door for da'wah in so many different ways.
Jazakallah khair. And that's of course why you wanted to talk about it, Wasim, as well.
Yes.
And a lot of these topics that we're talking about openly, freely, and we're not just saying Muslims do everything right. They don't. Islam has it right. No, Muslims don't practice Islam. This is the point, brothers and sisters who are watching, who are not Muslim and who are a bit confused about some of the things they see our Muslim brothers and sisters doing around the world. Well, we're correcting that on these shows. So keep tuning in on them. Khalid Rashid, you like to make some closing remarks about halal, about food, about diet in general?
Yeah, from my point of view, being a revert to Islam, and my experience is that halal food is not something new. It's been there through the ages. It's in the Old Testament, and logical speaking, for those that are not even Christian or Muslim, or even other faiths, the concept of halal is pretty simple, and it's for the benefit. It's good for people, for us, and it provides something that will cause harm to anyone. So we need to educate ourselves there was one convert that joined Islam, Alhamdulillah, a couple of days ago from here in New
MashaAllah.
Plymouth, New Zealand, and
MashaAllah.
his one of his first requests is for us to give him a list of what's halal and what's haram. So it's an opportunity for our brothers to educate new Muslims and the non-Muslim as well around the topic of halal food.
Fantastic, Khalid, Rashid. Hopefully you're going to be joining us from New Plymouth again. From that's the South Island or the North Island?
We're in North Island, just in the middle
North.
of the country.
Yeah. So there we are. Hopefully you're going to be joining us from there, from that beautiful beach there, which looks more akin to Philippines.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about a lot of issues. So we need to get your input as well. Jazakumullah khair from my brother, Sheikh Wasim Kempson from London, Khalid Rashid from New Plymouth in the North Island there in New Zealand, and Jazakumullah khair for our brothers and sisters from the Voice of Islam team that are making these podcasts, making these webinars possible every single week, twice a week. Friday night at the moment for Sheikh Wasim, and is good for him. And then Saturday morning again at 10 o'clock UK time. That is New Zealand time. That must be about 9 o'clock. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rashid, Khalid. That should be all we've got time for. Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters, today we've been talking about new Muslim challenges. We've been talking from London, from Leicester, from New Plymouth today, from New Zealand, subhanAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to live according to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beautiful halal, the prescribed and not the haram, for us to avoid the haram and to fulfill the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beautiful religion and be halal, live in a tayyib halal environment with all of the great things, and stop oppression of the farmers, like Sheikh Wasim has mentioned, stop oppression of the people who are selling halal as well. And those that are butchering the animals should be comfortable and should be calm and should be in line with, and the animal and the animal husbandry that is done by the farmers should also make them feel good as well. So all across right from the beginning of the life of the animal to the end of it, and for us, and the way it nurtures, the way we benefit from it, should be a good experience. That's what it's all about. That is halal. Brothers and sisters, it's been lovely talking to you, and thank you very much for joining us. Join us again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for the next show on this Voice of Islam platform. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفر الله وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.